Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the Thursday, July 30th meeting of the Policing and Community Engagement Ad Hoc Committee. I'm Vice Mayor Emily Duncan, and it will be my pleasure to facilitate us through this evening's conversation. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And before we jump into the details of the meeting, I'd like to ask us to take a minute of silence to remember a great hero who was laid to rest today, John Lewis, his final day. Join me. Okay, thank you so much for that. So I'd like to just mention our meeting participation instructions for members of the public who want to share feedback during the public comment period. You must do so by hitting the raise your hand button, and hopefully you see that on your screen. And that will either allow you to have an audio or video participation. So members of the public also who want to share comments with us can send them to the committee staff in advance of the meeting at communications@unioncity.org. And your comments will be read during the meeting to be put on the record. So this meeting will be streamed live to the Union City Facebook page. However, we will not be monitoring or accepting public comments through Facebook during the meeting. With that, I'd like to have roll call, please, Emma.
Vice Mayor Emily Duncan.
Here.
Councilmember Pat Gakoskos. Commissioner Melissa Schwen-Mallory.
Here.
Commissioner Michelle Williams-Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Jonathan Petty.
Here.
That concludes roll call.
Thank you. So the next item on our agenda is public comment. I mentioned just a moment ago, if anybody in the public would like to join us for a public comment, this would be the opportunity to hit the raise the hand button, and Emma will acknowledge you and allow you to be promoted to a speaker. Know that if you don't have a comment at this time that you'd like to make, we will have a second public comment section later in the meeting. So do we have any hands raised, Emma?
We do not have any hands raised at this time.
Okay. Very good. Then we're going to move on to our next item, which is open business. And under this section, we're going to have the staff read to us a communication that we have received since our last meeting. So I think we've got two, maybe three messages that we have received that you'll get an opportunity to hear live tonight. So Lauren, would you read those for us?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. So there's two messages that were sent into us via email. The first message is, I am unable to attend tonight's meeting. I do, however, want to make sure that within the conversations that will be held tonight, that there be an awareness of the importance of police in our city. They ensure that the population as a whole is safe. They allow for us to they allow for us to know that the worst offenders will hopefully not be hurting people in their own homes or in our community. Adding training and adding social services to a police force may be beneficial as a prevention method. Obviously, the more that our police force understands the population that they are working with and how to decrease the chances of escalating a situation, the better. This is safer for the officers and the individuals that they come into contact with. Ensuring that they have the financial support, providing enough officers to complete the necessary duties in a healthy and less stressful way, also allowing for adequate recovery time is paramount. Taking police out of the equation or reducing them to a breaking point is not the answer. So that concludes one comment, and now I'm going to read the second comment. Thankful that you've taken these steps to organize yourselves and to seek community input. As I listen, I'd like to share my thoughts as well. Number one, communication and bridge and trust building takes time, attention, and hopefully will result with better means and ways of accountability. Number two, regarding accountability, wondering if you've provided any data regarding police activity, arrests, stopping, traffic stops, traffic checks, and any data related to race interactions, exactly as Pastor Brown had brought up. Number three, also speaking of the UCPD being undermanned, what is the demographics of the UCPD? What is the UCPD budget? Build on strengths and experience. Important to name and determine which of those former building foundational blocks, as Mr. Jamarillo had suggested, absolutely necessary to make intentional improvements. In a way, no need to reinvent the wheel, though as always, there's now more urgency to improve and fine-tune messaging and our actions. Number four, generally, the public is also used to the police defending their actions. Though each case is unique, there are historical trends, including the rationales from the police that justify their actions. Regarding alleged, in quotation marks, incidents of police harassment and brutality, there is very little follow-up, and I'm sure for legal reasons, there appears to be no efforts at all for any reconciliation. Regarding not having to reinvent the wheel, we should all be familiar with restorative justice work that by its nature requires time and willingness for parties to be willing to participate and figure out meaningful ways to make sure that all victims, whether of crime or police harassment, have ways, as Pastor Brown's work and the work of the Union City Family Resource Center, to restore a sense of justice. Specific to police and community relations, what does our national cries for justice look like in Union City? Number five, regarding police budget, we know that throughout the country, many cities and councils are faced with calls for change. I'd like to know what action plans are in process with the UCPD to heed to some of these calls for change. Number six, is anyone able to investigate data of Union City residents that are incarcerated, and for what? How many Union City youth are serving time? Number seven, we all need to keep finding ways to break cycles of poverty and incarceration and pipelines to prison, like some that don't go to the dentist until a tooth is decayed. We all need to define, co-create, and facilitate opportunities that prevent recurrence of decadence. I think that was decadence, sorry. Number eight, apparently the Masonic Home is working on collaborating with the Alameda County Sheriff's Office to create a farm-to-table type program. In progress in San Leandro, you can check this out at www.acdsal.org. Number nine, and I'm almost done here. Number nine, also the New Haven, I'm assuming she's mentioning the New Haven Unified School Board. The NH Board also recently approved a statement regarding Black Lives Matter. I can send you a link. There's a lot of good work to be done and a lot of work that has slowly progressed and at times been deterred. Let's name our fears, traumas, concerns, hopes, and beliefs and find some common ground. I'm thankful to all of us that serve Union City in our unique capacities. We all want a safe, healthy, and vibrant community. Let's continue in good faith for the common good. Thank you. And that concludes.
Thank you very much. That message had a lot of thoughts and ideas that we've heard before. And if we continue to keep track of them, we're seeing a trend. So I just wanted to acknowledge that we heard them all, although we're not going to respond to them. But I do want to just say that on August 13th, we've invited our police chief, Barrett Renetti, to join us. And many of the questions and issues that have come before us, we've made him aware of them. And we're hoping that he will speak to some of them and be able to answer many of the questions that have come up for us already, as we've heard from the community. So don't think we're ignoring them, but we do want to have the right people be able to speak to them. Okay, so our next item on the agenda is kind of the core of our meeting, and it's our community listening sessions. And tonight we're going to have 4 members of the community join us and share with us their thoughts about policing and community engagement in Union City, what's working, what's not working, and what recommendations they would offer us to improve that relationship. So we're going to start first with, as our agenda suggests, Ricky Singh Arora. I see that he is on our list of participants. Emma, would you promote him to a speaker?
He's not available right now. So I've asked Darlene to speak first.
Okay. So Darlene, I see that you're there and ready to go, and we're happy to receive you. So Darlene Green, please, floor is yours. It'll take us just a minute to promote you.
And I sent her an invite. Darlene, there should be an invite on your screen to interact live with us.
Not seeing any activity. Darlene, are you there?
You know, perhaps we could move on to, and we could still maybe work on promoting her, and maybe we could just move to the next person.
Okay.
Oh, it says.
Yeah, she messaged that she accepted.
I'll withdraw the invitation and then do it again.
Okay, so we're going to move on, and then we'll have Darlene join us next. Is that what I'm hearing the team say? Okay, then our next speaker. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, our next speaker joins us from the Chief of the District Attorney's Office in Alameda County, Chief Robert Chennault. Emma, would you promote Robert? Welcome, Robert.
Yes, Robert, I did the same. I sent you an invite to request or to interact live.
So we're learning as we go here. It looks like
Yeah.
we're having technical difficulties. Has Robert responded?
No. I guess we can try Lieutenant Mendes.
You know, Emma, I can always I can try to reach them on their phones and just try to troubleshoot with them while you work on the next.
Okay, sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so with that, then we're going to move to our next speaker, a lieutenant with the Union City Police Department. Wait, I see that Robert has been promoted to a presenter, so let's not bump into each other. Is Robert there?
You see me?
We see you now. Thank you, Robert. That was challenging.
Yeah.
This technology is challenging us all. Welcome very much. Thank you for joining us.
And thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Robert Chennault. I'm the Chief of Inspectors with the District Attorney's Office. I've been with the office for 14 years, 5 years as the chief. So Lauren asked me to give you some thoughts from our point of view. And to start off with is the trends that we saw prior to George Floyd's death was mostly around AB 392, which is the new deadly force policy that is effective since the last 3 or 4 months. The major language in that talks about shootings, use of deadly force must now be considered necessary in the language of the new bill. The problem we've encountered as prosecutors is that the legislator did not define necessary. So the training that we've received and what we're working around now within the district attorney's office is when we look at deadly use of force, we can consider, was the use of force within policy of the police department? Was that use of force in a line and consistent with the training regarding the use of deadly force? So those are new factors that we can now weigh when we look at whether we're going to file charges or not in a deadly use of force. This is kind of a work in progress because there's a second piece of this. Does everybody hear me okay?
We do, yes.
Oh, okay. Is a training component of this through Senate Bill 230, which mandates starting in January that the police departments have de-escalation training and other trainings that help them maneuver around people who have mental illness or the kind of issues that they may encounter to give them greater tools to use other than deadly force. So those are the things that we were working on prior to George Floyd's death. Post that incident, there's been quite some outrage about, or let me say, questioning our relationship with police departments and maintaining some autonomy from the police departments. We work with them on a daily basis when they bring us cases to charge, but we also have to look at them objectively when we're considering or filing criminal charges against these same police officers. So that's something that we've able to continue to work on and build upon to give us some type of transparency with the community so that we are not partners with the police department in instances like that. So I'm looking at my timer here. I got 6 minutes left. So what I want to jump into, what I think is really important for the police department, and that is the training component here that's coming up. And I think a big thing is implicit bias training. Now, this is something that a lot of police departments have training, and they call some of these skills perishable skills. They have to have ongoing training to stay, keep abreast of the tasks they have to accomplish. And I think implicit bias is something that is also perishable. You can't go to a 2-day class and come out and be healthy and up to speed on implicit bias. The biggest part of this, I think, is the contact theory segment of implicit bias. And that is when you get out in the community and engage with people that are different than you are, and in instances where it's not involuntary or there's not some type of stress level going on. It's an open environment. We find that the more that you engage with people that are unlike yourself, the better you come to understand them and helps you interact with them without automatically going to this implicit bias that we all have and will always have and have to guard against every day that it's not kicking in. Along with that training and implicit bias, something we've done in the DA's office, it's mandatory for our police officer inspectors to get out and engage in the community. They have to find community events, ways to be a part of the community on their own and do it on their own time. And it's mandatory that they do this. Each member has to do this twice a year. That's where we started last year, post-COVID. We're going to build on that as we go. As we find that people, our employees, once they get out and interact with the entire community, it really helps them better understand what the community wants and what they need. In our office, we've also changed our role, that we don't just prosecute criminals. We found other ways of diverting people that are in the criminal justice center system to find a way for them to change their lifestyle or engage in services that makes them able to get a job and those kinds of things. So when I think of the police department changing their role is, and this has to come, I think, from the city government, from the council and the whole entire city management, to provide training for not only police officers, for dispatchers, and giving dispatchers the authority to not dispatch a call. So many police departments are driven by 911 responses. We have to go to every call that we receive. And I think it's important that dispatchers are enabled to, if they get a call, and I'm talking about the Karen type calls, those type of calls are not police matters, shouldn't be sent out to officers to try to deal with, that they're stopped at that point. But there would also have to be some type of education of the public that every time you have a squabble or some type of issue in your neighborhood with a neighbor or someone, 911 isn't the person you should call. There should be other places they can reach out to. Or if they do call the police department should be able to just automatically transfer that call to some other services. So that's where I think policing is going to go as far as, one other very important point about engaging in the community. We're all proud to send out members of our office that look like the community, are black and brown, other members of the office. And what I encountered the last couple of years with people would come to me and say, it's nice to have all of you here, but where are the white officers? Where are the white attorneys? They need to be here too. So I think that's something that goes in hand with the mandatory participation in something like that. I think that's all the points I wanted to cover. I kind of glossed over some kind of quickly.
I think you hit on all of the topics that we've heard before. We've heard about the 911 issue. We've certainly heard from multiple individuals about training. So I think that you have pretty much validated that what we're hearing is consistent with what you're seeing in the DA's office. So we thank you for sharing your thoughts and ideas with us.
Thank you.
So Emma, did we get any of our other speakers lined up? You tell me who's next.
Yep, so let's go ahead and try Darlene again. I think we figured out the technical end of it. So Darlene, I just sent you an invite to speak. You should see that on your screen.
Doesn't look like we're going to hear from Darlene tonight.
We can try Ricky while we wait for Darlene.
Okay. I'll let you push the buttons and you let me know who's available.
All right. Okay, Ricky, I'm sending you an invite too.
I think we got Ricky.
Okay.
Welcome, Ricky.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me? See me okay?
Yeah, sorry it took us a couple of tries to get you, but we're so glad that we were finally able to connect with you and that you've been willing to talk with us about your experiences and share with us your thoughts and ideas. So the floor is yours, Ricky.
Awesome. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Good evening, everyone. just quick intro. Ricky Aurora. I work in the tech industry. I've been living in Union City for past 11 years with my family. I live close to Jean and Dyer intersection, and I'm really lucky to live in the city. It's a privilege, I believe. I think let me start with my first experience and kind of my family's first experience with the police, right? So this is going back a few years. We had an intruder in our backyard, which my wife spotted, called 911. The cops responded within, I have to say, like 4 minutes, and they did a really thorough job. And the intruder ran away. They couldn't catch him, but did a very thorough job, made us feel very safe and secure. So that was the first experience, which was actually pretty good. And I think the way the city officials and the police has handled the ongoing crisis, especially in the middle of a pandemic, is also noteworthy from my standpoint. Having said that, I think I'm going to share the experience of the broader community here as well, especially people of color and more specifically the Sikh community as well as part of the Union City. So I talk to a lot of people. I do participate in a lot of community events and charity events and food drives. And as a result of that, my interactions, what they have yielded is that most people do feel pretty safe and secure in the city overall, right? They feel we live in a very safe environment with a low crime rate. However, there is this inherent fear of police and policing, and that has been, more recently has been enhanced due to all the events that have been going on. But even before that, there was this inherent fear of injustice, especially with people of color. And there have been some incidents where people of color specifically have been really afraid and apprehensive of calling 911 when an incident happened, and actually, they should have made that call, right? But they were really scared because of that inherent risk they feel, the vulnerability they feel as people of color being exposed to the police. Some of that also comes from the point that some of these folks, English is not the first language, so there is a big communication gap, and there's a big communication gap in terms of having the police understand and have empathy on what their need is and the vulnerability or the risk they are facing. So that I feel is a strong sentiment within the people of color and immigrants. There is a prejudice, a kind of an inherent bias tied into this as well, which is a lot of people of color feel that when they are approached, whether that's a traffic stop or when if the police comes as a result of a 911 call or whatever, they feel there is this inherent bias in terms of how the police behaves with them, right? Which is different from how they would behave if it's a non-immigrant or a non-person of color. And there have been a few incidents that I've been apprised of where this has happened, where the behavior is not optimal, the treatment is not optimal, and probably would not be the case if this wasn't a person of color. I talk about language barrier. I think one of the big things also is the youth, right? And so I do some mentorship mostly at the Sikh Temple in Fremont. And what we are seeing more and more is the youth being really scared of police, right? And having this mindset where police maybe is not fair, right? In all cases, they are fair with a certain section of society and not fair with the other section of society. And when I hear that from youth, from teens, that really scares me, right? Because police is there to protect us, to serve us, and to give us really a sense of security. And when our youth feel that way, that's a problem in my opinion, right? That's not great, because as they grow up and become adults, they're going to live with this fear, and they're going to live with this thought process that police maybe is not essentially on their side. So those have been some of the experiences. Again, I speak sort of on behalf of community here. I do have some recommendations. I took some notes before this, so I do have some recommendations that I would love to discuss and talk about. I think the first off is empathy. I think there's generally a lack of that in our PD. And again, there is. I don't want to basically put everyone in one single bucket, right? But there's a general lack of empathy, and I think developing that empathy in how to deal with situations and how to deal with problems would be really good. I think there's more accountability that can be added. So I was just doing some Googling and landed on a police scorecard and saw the grade F, which is based on the data. But what's the most interesting part of that data is that there were 0% complaints that were ruled in favor of civilians, right? And that grade was a 3%. So that pulled down the entire grade, right? And I think that accountability is very important. I think having these ratings is great. Having maybe a third party do some sort of rating for the police department is great. And setting targets for the police department where they can actually improve that rating and giving them those targets and maybe tying some budget to that targets could be an approach that could actually work. So a third party giving a rating based on data, based on maybe a community survey or poll, I think would be a great idea to kind of get an independent assessment of how the police department is doing. I think hiring more visible minorities would be a great step. For example, I know for a fact that within the Sikh community, there are a lot of youngsters, a lot of youth who would love to be in the force and really contribute to the city they were born in or grew up in or went to school in. I think that would be a great thing. I think some of the neighboring cities have taken some steps of having more visible minorities on their force, which I think really help kind of paint a very diverse picture for the police department. I think community outreach programs would be really good. I haven't seen it personally, but I know there was a program perhaps a few years ago where police officers would go to neighborhoods, would actually meet people, shake hands, smile, right? All of that stuff. I think that would be really good. Outreach in schools, churches, temples. That would be really good to kind of bridge that trust gap and really bring more trust into the relationship. Like I know for a fact we would love to have someone from the UCPD come to the Sikh temple in Fremont, which has a sizable gathering from the city of Union City. So we'd love to have them reach out to the community, build that relationship, build that trust with the community. And then I think finally the budget, right? So again, my research said that 42% of the city's budget is going into PD. Now, defund maybe is probably a strong word, but I think there might be opportunities to actually take that budget and put that budget towards a group of police or whatever we call them, but folks who can actually respond to non-violent type of crimes. I know City of San Francisco is doing something like that. I know there's thought process going on across different PDs. I think that would be really helpful because the training you need to respond to some of this, especially stuff that is concerning mental issues could be different, right? And it needs a different skill set, needs a different training to actually respond to that in an effective fashion. And some of that budget can be used for prevention initiatives, right? How can we prevent things? Prevention is always better. So how can we prevent things from happening in the first place? Is that additional community development? Is that more education? So there could be some other initiatives where some of that budget can be more efficiently utilized. I know that's a fine balance. We want to make sure that the police department is still funded, can still prevent crime in our city, but I believe some of that can be reused for some of the initiatives I mentioned. So that's all I had prepared. I hope this was helpful for everyone.
Well, I'd like to say it was very thorough. I think that you gave it a lot of thought, talked with a lot of people in the community, gave us some wonderful recommendations and some very insightful experiences. So thank you very much, Ricky, for taking the time to join us and share your thoughts. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Did I see that Darlene had been promoted to a presenter? I don't see her face, though. Is she available? There she is. Welcome, Darlene.
Finally. Hi, how are you?
Sorry it took us so long to get you on and work out our technical difficulties, but we're quite happy to have you. So you are next in queue, and we're anxious to hear from you. So the floor is yours, Darlene.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Emily, and also council members. It's my pleasure to come to you, not only as being a Union City resident, but also a member of the Afro-American Culture and Historical Society. And to some of you might know, we've been around for over 40 years, so we've seen a lot throughout the Tri-City, including Union City, of the police department, and also the issues that we've been facing. And so I don't know if you remember, about 4 years ago, I went to Mayor Bernacci and also Chief McAllister, saying that we need to have a unity walk. At that time, our young folks, our husbands and daughters were getting just stopped, being harassed, arrested, and of course, even like a couple of years ago with Augie Gonzalez being shot by police, even Oscar Grant and own relatives. So this was on our heart. So we wanted to get together to bring the community and the city together to say, you know, we need to address this problem. Well, at the time we brought it up, the city wasn't ready and the community wasn't ready, but thank God the community is ready right now to address these issues. And so a lot of the things that I wrote down, you've heard before, so maybe these will be the ones that'll get the most percentage that we need to concentrate on to bring unity and understanding. We need healing, and there need to be a sense of comfort and peace in all of our communities. And so it's bigger than just Union City. This is something that's global. So my prayer is that all the cities work together to come up with a resolution for this. We need an apology, a genuine apology, and mean it. Right now, even in corporate America, it's like we need to talk about it, but do you really want to understand what this is all about? So for police officers and the community, there needs to be some apology on both sides. That's when the forgiveness and the healing starts. And it's going to take a lot more than a year. This is going to take a while to get us where we need to be. Some of the ideas or recommendations that I have is, you've heard many times, is accountability and transparency. We always hear the justification is it was out of fear. Well, we need to stop walking in fear. And so this is a way that we need to begin to know each other. And fear stems for really not knowing the other person, is what you perceive. So that goes on both sides. And I see we're making progress, some progress. The other part is transparency, which we've heard before, on improve our reporting, the tools that we use, how are we using these metrics from the data that's collected, and then how is it disseminated between the community so we can see what happens. And then training and our hiring practices. What are we doing to vet the officers that are coming in? The training, is it really, are they really getting racial bias training? Is it mental illness? I mean, if you're doing your training and there's red flags, then you shouldn't graduate. I mean, these are flags, or are we trying to make the numbers, is what I'm trying to say. We do a little bit more when we are, when the rookies are in training. And at the same time, that goes with us too. We need to understand, take time to understand the police department as well and what they go through. Pay for performance. I think every officer should be measured by the feedback from the community. Check in, hey, how am I doing? And then when it's time for evaluations, you could draw on how the community feels about where you are and where you need to be improved. So that way there's like a partnership. Also, I felt that the officers should get to know our Black and brown youth, find out what their issues are. Some of these stem multi-generational. Try to be a mentor instead of a roadblock. So when you look at these youth, you think about your future police officers. These are our future officers rather than turning them away. So this is an opportunity to bridge the gap. Also, we're an organization, the organization that I belong in. I would love for them to draw on our experience, utilize us to help. It's hard, it's painful, but I think we're ready. And so hopefully some of the recommendations and some ideas will be beneficial to all of you. We're an old organization, we've gone through much, but there's always hope for improvement. And so I want to leave you with something that we used in our Unity Walk, and this can apply daily. It's called Why We Walk, or you can fill in your own blank. We walk because we prefer understanding over misconception, which is number one. We walk to teach our children tolerance and acceptance. We walk to learn more about ourselves and others. We walk to identify our similarities rather than our differences. We walk to celebrate our diverse background and perspectives. We walk to ease the pain of our past transgressions. We walk to feel the power of our community. We walk to reunite. We walk to make the world a better place, and we walk to change lives. And I think we're doing that right now by having all these community policing meetings, getting feedback from the community, let alone the officers and across the country. So I hope this little bit helps, and looking forward to see what else you have to do.
Thank you, Darlene. Your feedback is always important, and you have been a good partner to Union City for many, many years. I do remember one Unity Walk that we did all get an opportunity to participate in. Sounds like you're suggesting it's time to do another one. So we will certainly receive your feedback and value your relationship as you continue to share with us things that will be useful to the community. So thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
And I'm sure we'll be talking with you again soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're moving right along here. It looks like our fourth and final speaker this evening is Lieutenant Steve Mendes, and I see that he has been promoted, and I'm sure his picture will appear shortly. Steve, are you there?
I am here, and I'm trying to see if my photo, I don't know, can you hear me?
I hear you, and I see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great. I'm joining you from home, so I really appreciate this opportunity to do this. And just so you'll know, if it looks like I'm reading from a script, I actually am. I'm not going to lie. I wrote down what I wanted to say because it really is important to me. So without further ado, here we go. And so good evening. I would like to thank the members of the committee for inviting me to appear in this forum. My intent will be to speak to you about my personal experience with the Union City Police Department, my interactions with members of the community, and community programs that we have been a part of, which I feel are a huge benefit to our youth. First and foremost, I just wanted to let everybody know that I am married to Lisa Mendes, who is a police dispatcher, and I have 3 adult children, Alexi, Stephen Jr., and Melanie. I also have a granddaughter, Leah, who is about to turn 3. I'm a lieutenant and serve on the command staff of your police department. I'm currently assigned to the Professional Standards Unit, which includes the Personnel and Training Unit. I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I am also a graduate of the Sherman Block Leadership Institute and the Senior Management Institute for Police. While employed at UCPD, I have served as a SWAT operator, hostage negotiator, crime scene investigator, detective, field training officer, and as a COPS officer specifically assigned to the Dakota District. I'm also a former co-facilitator of our parent project, a former instructor of the MVROP law enforcement class at Logan. But I also currently serve as the board president for Centro Servicios, and I serve as the vice president of the Hispanic Community Affairs Council of Alameda County, which is a service that provides scholarships to students in our community who are at or below the poverty line. I'm a member of the advisory board for the Union City Family Center and a member of the executive committee for the San Francisco Bay Area Boy Scouts of America, where I serve as a region contact for Police Explore programs. I've just been asked to be a member of a National Latino Police Officer Association through the Alameda County chapter, and I accepted. I was born and raised in Union City, and I'm a product of immigrant parents from Mexico. And I, like many, am a first-generation Mexican-American, and I'm also bilingual. I lived my entire life in the Dakota District until my family moved away in 1990. I attended Cyril School, Bernard White, and James Logan High School. Growing up in Dakota in the late 70s through the 80s was a challenge. Union City at that time was a close-knit group of hardworking lower to middle-income families who looked out for each other. Unfortunately, there was a very visible problem in the community, which was alcoholism, heroin and PCP use, and prostitution. I remember being a small 7-year-old kid walking to Cyril School and seeing my first dead body, a heroin overdose, in the field across the street from my house. At 12, I saw the muzzle blast from a shotgun which killed a man at the handball courts near my house. Police were not trusted and had no visible presence in the community other than driving around their patrol cars and making arrests. I remember being told by family and friends that police were bad and that I should never trust them or count on them as a resource. As luck would have it, I started to hang out with kids who were generationally influenced by gangs, drugs, and alcoholism. These kids included my own cousins who were deeply involved in a local gang at that time. I felt that it was the way to go, and this was how I should be living my life. Fortunately, I had a run-in with a police officer when I was 14. This officer, Joe Leon, took interest in me and had a conversation with my parents. He invited me to the police department for a meeting, which included several other youth members from our community. His group was called the Explorers, and this was my first personal introduction to the police department. I was very skeptical and I felt out of place. In fact, I don't think I was fully trusted because of who I was, who my family was, and what I looked like. I kept going to the meetings, and eventually this program became part of my life. Being an explorer changed my perspective because I got to see things from the inside out instead of from just down the street. In 1989, I was hired as a records and communications cadet, and I continued through the ranks and was eventually hired as a police officer in 1996. During this time, the police department began to take a different approach to policing. The COPS program was moving forward, and a new community-based relationship program was being created. Officers were assigned to projects around the city, and out-of-the-box thinking was encouraged. The emphasis was on positive community contact and changing generational criminal behavior through educational programs such as DARE, the Parent Project, and others. We also brought on family counselors, which assisted us in providing services to the family who were experiencing problems with strong-willed children and other family issues. I, along with other officers such as Sergeant Brandon Hayward and Jimmy Martin, as well as many others, became co-facilitators of the Parent Project with Christy Potter and Patricia Abadesco. This was a unique opportunity for us to meet the parents of the kids who we continually contacted on the street. It helped us cement strong relationships with them, and in some small way helped all involved to see a different side of each other. In order to change the root of the drug and alcohol problems in Union City, the COPS unit and the city created a team called the CHAT team, Community Health Action Team. This team conducted inspections of businesses and residences which came from community complaints. Often, the police were there only to help the other members of the team, which included the fire department, neighborhood preservation, and building inspectors. This program helped improve neighborhoods and close numerous bars, pool halls, and liquor stores, which kept the Decoto and Alvarado districts hostage to criminal activity, drug use, alcoholism, and prostitution. This completely changed the face of what we used to call the Main Street, or E Street, between Railroad and Mission Boulevard. The COPS unit in Union City continued strong well into the 2010s. We participated in programs such as National Night Out, Coffee with the Cops, Parent Project, Recess with the Cops, Neighborhood Watch, CEPTED, which stands for Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design, Business Watch meetings, 911 for Kids, Police Athletic League Boxing, the SRO program, Shop with a Cop, and the Holiday Trailer. All these programs were meant to bring the community into partnership and close contact with the police department. It was an opportunity for us to show our human side and for the police to see the people from the community in a positive manner. Unfortunately, these programs required funding and support, which Union City has not been able to consistently provide. It's nobody's fault. The cost of the programs such as these are very expensive. It's not my place to comment on decisions made which affected the termination of these programs, but I can only say that they worked and they meant something to our department and our community. I've heard much about changes to our policies and procedures, and I agree that we should always learn better ways to do policing. I can tell you this, we have worked hard over the years to make sure our policies and procedures are in line with progressive methods of training and suggestions from sources like the President's Report on 21st Century Policing. This does not mean that we're there, and it does not mean that we're finished, and it does not mean that we can't get any better. We continue to learn, apply, and revisit, and listen to what's best. We implement, and in some cases, lead the way with our programs and policies, but it's not finished. We can never finish improving, and that's what we strive to continue. I'm nearing the end of my career with this agency. I could potentially retire in the summer of 2021. If that's the case, I would put in a total of 36 years of service, 4 as a volunteer and 32 as an employee with the City of Union City Police Department. I'd like to mention a few things about what I believe have been the most important parts of my career, the UCPD Explore program. I told you that it's how I started with the UCPD, and it's always occupied a special place in my heart. I've done my homework on this program, and I can tell you the following. The Police Explorer started in 1966, making it the oldest continuously active youth program in the City of Union. Since 1970, we have hired 30 former explorers as sworn UCPD officers. 10 other former explorers have gone on to careers as police officers with other police agencies. 20 former explorers have become support staff with UCPD and other police agencies around the Bay Area and in different states. Currently, there are 7 explorers working as police officers in our department. Lieutenant, 1 sergeant, Stan Rodriguez, 2 detectives, and 3 patrol officers. There are also 5 former explorers working as support personnel in the department. I took over as the Police Explorer Advisor in 2007, and I knew at that moment that this would be my calling. We have worked hard over the years to make the UCPD Explorers a premier career training and experience learning program. Our department has seen the value of bringing kids in from our community, often from the NVROP law enforcement class at Logan, and provide them with marketable skills that they need to be better, successful students and eventually employees. We don't try to build little cops. We try to educate kids and give them skills that they can use throughout whatever career they decide to follow. For instance, in 2007, we noted that kids who were trying to become explorers were failing the oral interview at a rate of approximately 8 out of every 10. We took a close look at this and realized that the kids coming in, 14, 15, 16, and 17-year-olds, had never taken a professional oral interview with an oral board panel. We created an oral interview class for all potential explorers. It was mandatory for them to take the class, which was developed by dispatcher Lisa Mendes and included a mock interview. The kids were taught how to dress appropriately, how to answer difficult questions, and how to keep eye contact during the interview process. It was a huge success, and we soon saw a 98% passing rate. Kids who took this class used the basic skills and applied them to take oral interviews for other positions within our department. And over the years, we've had some that have even reported back to us by saying that they've gotten a job, not in law enforcement, because they used the information taught by Lisa's class. We have taught each kid to respect their family and community and to give back whenever possible. Over the years, our kids have provided thousands of volunteer hours of community service to the City of Union City, They have become the face of our department, and if we keep it going, they will be our future, the future of our city. How does this tie into today's conversation? Well, I heard some stories from the past speakers in this forum, one of which touched me tremendously. It was a story that Manny provided regarding her experience with the Union City Police, and how they treated her mother. This is very personal for me, so that's something I never knew about Mrs. Allen. She was my history teacher at Logan and one of my favorite teachers ever. She taught us to look at the real history of our nation, and I gained so much from her. After hearing Manny's story, I felt terrible for her and Mrs. Allen, but then I remembered something else. Every time I saw Mrs. Allen at a school function, basketball game, football game, she always greeted me with a smile and a hug. She looked beyond my uniform and I feel that she saw the kid that she once taught at Logan. She had no animosity towards me and always made me feel special. I would like to say now at this moment that she did make a big impact on my life because of who she was, how she carried herself, and how she cared for all of her students. My relationship with her could never have been this way unless we had that student-teacher connection. And this is how we make a difference in our community when it comes to police relationships. We must try to continue our police-based community outreach program, targeted at our youth, and reinvigorate our efforts to communicate with each other. As it stands right now, our officers do not have the time to stop and be a pivotal part of our community. We are understaffed and the lowest paid. Our officers are overworked and are back to driving call to call without end. But I don't want you to take this as a complaint. I'm not trying to get any sympathy here. We're happy to serve this community. We know what we have, and we know we have it good here. Defunding our agency is not an option as we are already at a significant deficit in personnel. Remember, I'm the personnel guy, I know. Over the years, we've lost bits and pieces of our department, like the cops unit and our own dispatch center, and other staffing that was frozen or outright cut. I'm not sure what the future will bring for Union City. I can only hope that we can work together to continue our fight to provide the best for our community, and that we listen to each other instead of talking over each other. I would like to close with a quote which I feel is appropriate, especially today, and it is, "Do not get lost in the sea of despair. Do not become bitter or hostile. Be hopeful. Be optimistic." John Lewis. Thank you.
Steve, thank you so much for sharing that experience with us and walking us through your career. Much of what you talk to us about are things that people who have joined us have said we need to have more of. So it sounds to me like many of the things that you've experienced in your career have gotten lost through some of the budget cuts we've experienced in the city. And the community now is not experiencing them, or maybe they weren't here when we were offering them years ago, so they don't have a memory of them. If I'm quoting you correctly, there are things we've done in the past that if we just started doing better, many of the issues that have come up before us might be addressed in some way.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing them with us. Thank you for being here. One of the things we've heard consistently from people is they like to put a human face on our police officers, and I think tonight you've given Lieutenant Steve Mendes a human face. So thank you so much for that.
No problem.
Okay. Thank you so much. Those were excellent presentations, a lot of food for thought, a lot of good ideas. So at this time, we want to move into committee comments. So this is an opportunity for our committee members to speak to any of the presentations or all of them, or however you'd like to respond. So I'm going to start here with you, Melissa, if you would share your thoughts.
Uh, Thank you, Emily. And first of all, I'd like to thank all of our speakers, Mr. Singh, Ms. Green, Mr. Chenault, and Lieutenant Mendes for coming tonight. You all gave us such great feedback, so many great things to think about. I'm really just overwhelmed right now, but you know, I really like all of the feedback. I noticed from Ricky Singh that he talked about empathy in our police department, and that is definitely some feedback I've heard from the community where I live in Dakota as well. You know, and it could be that our police officers are just so busy that they don't have time to give that care that they would normally give. And I like Darlene's idea of a community walk, having community meetings, and you know, just meeting together and trying to understand one another as community and as police. And I really liked Mr. Chenault's, all of his suggestions. There were so many great ones. But especially the one of having dispatchers trained, maybe not always sending out police, but sending out other trained, you know, community officers and so forth. And then finally, Lieutenant Mendes, thank you so much for bringing the history of our community programs that have unfortunately lost a lot of funding. I really appreciate that, and hearing your story and how you've been so involved in the community, and definitely thank you for your service.
Thank you, Melissa. Jonathan, would you like to share your thoughts next?
Sure. And again, echo what Melissa said. Thank you very much to our speakers, Robert, Ricky, Darlene, and Steve, for sharing your thoughts and your time with us. It means a lot to us. As I look back on my notes, some of the things that had underlined, I guess, struck me as people were talking were Robert's call for implicit bias training, more engagement, more training for police and dispatchers, and how that's kind of echoed in Steve's talk about his career in the police, the things that he's been involved with in terms of growing police officers into the community knowing the police officers. And then again, Ricky talked about language barriers, the youth and the community being scared of the police, and increasing police empathy and more visibility of minorities. And going back to Steve's talk about basically the same things, bridging those gaps between police and the community, increasing empathy and being more visible, and having more minorities. And then Darlene's comments for increasing unity, healing, and comfort and peace are echoed elsewhere, and a lot of the people who have spoken with us. And her question, are we really getting the racial bias training that we need in the police department, is a good question. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you, Jonathan. Michelle, would you like to share your thoughts with us at this time?
Sure. I echo a lot of the thoughts that have been just spoken. But basically, I would like to thank everyone tonight, all the speakers who have given us echoing feedbacks, also future possible changes, and also expressing and bringing awareness of what the past programs were in Union City. Most importantly, I feel that, and I hear there's a possible future for hope and healing. And I feel that if our community still has that in their hearts and in their minds, that is very important, that they feel Union City has something very special to offer.
Thank you, Michelle. So sounds like the committee was quite moved by our presenters tonight. A lot of good ideas, a lot of food for thought. things for us to begin to think about and synthesize, because as we move through the rest of our schedule, we are nearing the time when recommendations will be required. And I'll mention in our good of the order what our timeline is and when we'll need you to summarize that information for us. But at this time, we're going to move on to item 8, which is public comment. And for those of you who have joined us and listened into our conversations and our presenters tonight, this is an opportunity for you to share your thoughts, react to anything you heard, or speak to things that you have not heard that you think you'd like to share with us. And as I mentioned early on, if you'd like to speak, you just need to hit the hands up button and Emma will acknowledge you. I think we've figured out our technical challenges here and we'll be able to bring you on board to speak with us if you are interested and open to sharing your thoughts. So Emma, do you have any hands that are up tonight?
Not right now. I put out an invitation a few minutes ago, but haven't gotten anything.
Okay. Well, we have a few more items that we're going to cover. If you see some hands that come up, you let us know. So we're going to move on to good of the order, and this is an opportunity to talk about things that we haven't covered on the agenda tonight. And one of the things there's two things I want to mention. I want to mention that Alameda County has launched its own racial justice and police reform working group. They had their first meeting today, and participating in this working group are the mayors, the police chiefs, and the city managers of all of the cities in Alameda County. And I had the opportunity to listen in on their conversation today. And what I can say is what we're talking about here in Union City, in our committee, are the things that they're talking about at the county level. And I think the thought is that there will be some things that get implemented countywide that we can all leverage and work on together. And then each of us in our own cities will continue to work on our unique issues. So this is an important topic across the county. So we're going to continue to hear more, and hopefully resources will become available also that will be able to help us implement some of the ideas and thoughts that are coming up tonight. The other thing I wanted to mention is that we had talked about our timeline for getting information to the council on our recommendations and thoughts. And I just wanted to remind you that we have a meeting coming up August 6th, and we have our meeting coming up August 13th, where we'll have our chief of police join us. And then the council will be taking the week of August 20th off. That's the council break week. And then we will come back together on the 27th. So I would like to ask the committee to begin to think about the recommendations you've heard over the last, believe it or not, this is our 5th meeting. So we've been at this a little over a month. We've heard a lot of wonderful ideas and thoughts. So this would be a good time to begin to put them together, because we'd like to have you submit them to us after the meeting on the 13th of August. So that during that time when the council's taking its break, the staff and I can get together and we can synthesize and summarize and put together the recommendations that we've received from you, and we will bring them back on the 27th, which will be a working meeting of this committee to come up with the level of priorities on the recommendations that we want to take to the council. And we do plan to make a presentation to the city council probably at their second meeting in September. So just so you have the timeline, you know where we're headed, what we need to do, so that you can begin to put together all of the good ideas that you've heard. And if there are committee members who are wanting to come up with new ideas or suggestions for speakers, we still have a few weeks to do that. So send us the names, and if we have any members of the public who have thoughts and ideas on things that we have not yet out, that's our schedule and our timeline. So get your ideas and information to us so that we can make sure that they are included in the conversation that we're going to plan to have with our city council in September. So with that, those are my two thoughts. Good of the order is an opportunity for each of you to share any final thoughts you may have or ideas that have come to you since you made your comments that you might want to share before we wrap up our meeting this evening. And I'm going to start with you, Jonathan, and see if you had any final thoughts for good of the order tonight.
No, I don't have any additional thoughts tonight for good of the order.
Okay. What about you, Michelle?
Nor do I. Thank you.
Okay. Melissa, we'll round this out with you. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Hate to disappoint, but no, I don't.
Okay, well, that means that you're all very full of information and ideas. I think we had a wonderful meeting. The speakers were excellent. I want to thank Lauren and Emma for all of the work that they've done and that they do to help us identify speakers and to get our speakers coached and ready to be with us tonight. I think we had a wonderful conversation, and if there aren't any other open items that I have missed and need to talk about, I'm looking to Lauren and Emma to give me the sign that I've covered everything. I think we have.
Yep.
Thank you all so much for being here and being so engaged. And again, thank you to all of our wonderful speakers. If any of them are still on the phone, we really enjoyed and learned a lot from you tonight. So with that, I think we're done. Thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you again next Thursday. Good night.